I first came to Pilgrim Place 21 years ago, I was younger and full of energy and decided I would take a few interims in the area. And the first one was way out in Simi Valley, 72 miles from here. And we scooted along the freeway almost alone on early Sunday morning. And my wife was seated at my side. And she would tap me on the knee over and over again. And she would say to me, "Do you have a good story? Do you have a good story?" She knew that the secret of good preaching was to have a good story. Well, that's a mystery in a way, as Jesus suggested, that when the seed of the kingdom of God is sown, sometimes it falls on fertile ground, and great things happen. There's a great rich harvest. And sometimes the seed falls on ground and a huge plant arises. In other words, there are strange and miraculous things happening when the seed of the kingdom of God falls on human hearts and minds. We are all sowers of the seed, insofar as we are part of the Christian community. In our words, in our actions, we are sowing the seeds of the kingdom. I'd like to tell a true story about my own life. When I came to the University of New Hampshire in 1950, there were 3,000 students on campus. But on Sunday morning, there were not more than 4 or 5 students in the local college community church. The Roman Catholic students went faithfully to Mass, but the Protestant students seemed to enjoy staying away. So I went to the trustees and said, could I have a morning ecumenical service on campus in the music building? And after some discussion, they voted on it and brought me word, yes, you can have the music building every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. And I went to the art department. Will you design me a chancel? Oh, we would be glad to do that. I went to the music department. Could you furnish me a choir? Oh, yes. And they gave me a choir of 30 voices. And so over the 6 years that I was there, I began preaching to a kind of a wild and unpredictable crowd of students that sometimes reached 300. And I often wondered if any of them heard what I said, if the seed fell on fertile ground. Of course, they went through college and graduated and scattered to the 4 winds. Some of them I kept up with, but some I lost all track of. And last October, on my 90th birthday, I got several hundred letters, many of them from my former students. And I had the feeling, yes, the seed of the kingdom of God did fall on fertile ground. A young man named Tom said, you preached on the Last Judgment, where Jesus called all the nations together and said, when I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was naked, did you give me clothing? When I was sick and in prison, did you come unto me? And I asked, how many of you go to churches where that is practiced, where the sick are called on and those in prison are ministered to? And most of them said that not in our church, we never had to go near a prison or prisoners. And Tom married and joined a church in Belmont, Massachusetts, and started a prison ministry. He went and spoke at other churches. He finally got 50 churches to minister to prisons in Massachusetts, and he is chairman of the prison ministry. All because some one word about calling on those in prison stuck in his mind. On the anniversary of the founding of the fraternities and sororities, the girls and boys all came in a body and put flowers on the altar. Some of them, I thought, were totally disinterested in the church and anything I had to say. Sometimes there was murmuring. I had the feeling they were studying their lessons in the back row. But one boy, Al, I remember, was considered the wildest member of his fraternity. He was always in trouble. He was always being called into the dean's office. He is the last person in the world that I thought the gospel would reach. And yet he wrote to me that he became a minister and spent his entire life in an inner city parish at a very small salary, ministering to the poorest of people. And he said something you said that Sunday that our fraternity came stuck in my mind. Unless you commit your life to something greater than yourself, to the cause of Christ, and to love those who are unloved, your life will not have meaning. And he said somehow my totally disorganized life began to change. Jim became a missionary to Mexico and wrote me a long letter about his life as a missionary. So we never know when the seeds of the kingdom will sprout in someone's life and give forth abundance of virtue and change to the whole world. But it was evident to me as a chaplain counseling students day in and day out that many had bad seeds sown in their life by their parents, by their teachers. You're stupid. You can't ever be anything. You say you want to be a doctor, you could never do that. You'll never amount to anything. Why people would say such negative things and sow them in the hearts and minds of students was very, very strange to me. And my job was to undo that damage that had been done by, sometimes by parents, sometimes by teachers. But the students felt that they were capable, that they could grow, that they could change, that they could fulfill their life ministry in some great vocation. The mystery of the mustard seed. I think the most story that to me suggests how a tiny little seed could sprout into something very great is a true story. Dale Turner, for 20 or more years, was minister of the University Church in Seattle. And every year he had a confirmation class. And at the end of the last weeks of the class, he said, anyone in my class who memorizes the Sermon on the Mount, I will take them to dinner in the Space Needle. Maybe some of you have been in the Space Needle. This was when it was quite new. And for a youngster to go up there and have dinner with his senior minister was considered quite a privilege. And one year the only boy who memorized the Sermon on the Mount was little Billy. Years and years later, Bill Gates, the billionaire through his inventions in the computer industry, gave to the cause of charity, not only in this country, but to Africa and throughout the world. He gave $32 billion. $32 billion he gave to charity. And he attributed it, his desire to share his wealth, with the fact that Dale Turner had made him memorize the Sermon on the Mount.